create a strong relationship between the two houses, given many of us represent the ordinary voter. Of course, there are people who are in office, but we are also legislators. And if we just broaden the discussion and say that the reason we need peace, the reason we seek peace, the reason we have been troubled by lack of peace for the last 40 years because of cross-border terrorism is because we are on the great adventure, as Shashidi mentioned, of building a great nation. And in that building of a great nation, we also want to involve Colombia in whatever form capacity that you can. And similarly, I think you have struggled with terrorism for many years. You have conquered terrorism as far as we can see. There are still niggling doubts. You're also on a great journey of now building with a peaceful solution to Colombia. So in some ways, the opposite of this terrorism is peace and prosperity for millions of people. And that's what is at stake. It's not just the fact that we have short-term war. It's that the minds of people get terrorized, as has been the case in Colombia, as has been the case in India. And like my esteemed colleague mentioned, when 26/11 happened, when 173 civilians were killed in cold blood in Mumbai, I happened to be in that city. It stopped everyone in their tracks, and it created an atmosphere of fear, and that is what we are fighting against. I think the world has got enough problems to tackle. You talked about biodiversity, you talked about economic growth, you talked about many of the things that we have to tackle together. So here we are not only emphasizing that India is aggrieved with this cross-border terrorism, but we would also argue that the sources of that terrorism have aggrieved the whole world. When Osama bin Laden was discovered just a kilometer and a half from the National Defense Academy equivalent of the Pakistani military, that sends a signal. When we have consistently been attacked across the place, not just in Mumbai, but many other times, we've always put restraint. Now's the time we are saying no further restraint, zero tolerance to terrorism cross-border. And as we said, we are here to explain what happened after 22nd of this last month. But here we are also here to explain that if we don't come together as a whole world against terrorism, then this will continue. So it's not just an India challenge, I think it's a world challenge. And Colombia has suffered, you conquered. We seek your understanding, not just as officials, but also as people, so that you can communicate to the Colombian masses, as we will go back and communicate the friendship that we developed outside of the narrow point that we made on Sindoor with our own people. I think across this table, we have approximately 12 million people represented, just the legislators here itself. And I think what we see, as we saw in the meeting earlier today, what we saw yesterday, what we saw the last evening when we had dinner, is a tremendous amount of cultural bonhomie between the two nations. It goes beyond Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I think he's a very foundational person.